Welcome to the Awaken Energy Podcast. I'm Tom Soul, founder of Awaken Energy Healing and the Middlewave app and path of conscious transformation, deeper inner healing. So if you're new here, you maybe want to calm the mind, bring a bit more joy, peace and contentment in your life by learning to meditate, then you can try the Middlewave app free for 30 days. It'll all be in the description below. Jump on, give it a go and join our WhatsApp community. Meditation changed my life. I'm hoping to share it with as many people as possible. First things first, please drop us a wee like and subscribe on whatever platforms you're listening on. And let's get started. Our amazing guest today is Dr. Paul Hubbert, PhD, author, multidimensional sound master, and founder of the Institute of Holographic Sound and Inner Balance. So Paul holds a PhD in psychology. He's certified in grief recovery, hypnosis, addiction recovery. He's also a multidimensional sound master, ordained minister, Reiki master, and crystal power grid worker. So we've got so much to unpack, so much wisdom and knowledge to impart to us on this amazing podcast conversation today. I'm so excited. There's so much to get into. So Paul works with the half-hour energy. So the half-hours are masters of sound and love, along with the angelic realms to manifest health in the physical body and inner spirit. So we'll get into that a bit further, and hopefully Paul can explain to us too a bit more about that. So Dr. Paul blends vocal harmonics and crystal singing bowls to access the healing vibration of sound and music in its multidimensional holographic form, and this is known as holographic sound healing. Paul is an amazing author of this book here, which I'm going to show you all about too, and how to get it, and I'll let you know how it is. I've not had a chance to read it yet, but I will, don't worry. So Paul, tell us a little bit about your journey growing up and what it was like. Were you always spiritual, and how was it growing up, and where are you from? And thank you so much for being here as well.
Well, first off, Tom, thank you for having me on your show. It's an honor to be here, and I look forward to sharing, whatever comes up for us. So, how I got here, or my background, it was a little rocky. I grew up with a alcoholic father. My mom and dad separated. They divorced when I was 7 or 8 years old, and so I was mainly raised by my mom. And I was really a pretty introverted kid, and I was a real pain in the butt, pretty much, And as I got a little older, I moved around. I lived with a couple of different aunts and uncles as I was going to school. And when I became a teenager, all hell broke loose. I was wild and crazy. To give you an example, a lot of times kids will get grounded for doing things. Well, my mom would ground me, and I would just laugh at her, and just continue on with whatever I was doing. So it was as fun, but I have to back up a little bit. When in my early years in school, I went to a private school, a Episcopal school, and it was actually very religiously oriented. But I only went there for about 3 years, and when I quit, or when I went on to public school, my mom stopped going there as a church, and we started going to a spiritualist church. And if you have any idea of what a spiritualist church is, it's definitely different. Full of psychics and channelers, and it was a trip. And it was amazing. We started having seances at the house. And so it introduced me to a realm of consciousness that I wasn't familiar with, but it was very curious. And so I just sat around with all that and observed. I didn't really get involved. I just observed, and things happened. And I thought, well, this is cool. But then I became a teenager. And like I said, all hell broke loose at that point. And I got very involved in drugs and alcohol, and nearly to the point of killing me. And at 24, I stopped. There were some emotional and physical interventions that occurred that where I my path changed.
Was there a moment that changed it all, like physically? What was there like a moment that you had to stop? Like what happened?
I Yes, I was I was facing prison. Um, I was getting I would wake up in the mornings, and before I had a chance to get high, and I just asked myself, what am I doing? What this isn't me. I'm a good guy. And of course, then I'd go get high, and that would solve that. But the fact that those things were occurring, and then the physical pressure from the outside, I started looking for alternatives. Now, I didn't think I could stop because I had been involved in treatment programs before, and uh, they told me once an addict, always an addict. And I thought, well, I'm screwed. I may as well give in to this. But I discovered that, if I would read between the lines, that wasn't necessarily the case. That there was life beyond this. And it wasn't an easy path. But at that point in my life, I I chose, but at the same time, it's like everything was pointing into take this new path. And the new path, if you're familiar with 12 steps, that's the direction I went, which has a spiritual component to it. And I was never not uh, a spiritual kind of person, but I definitely didn't practice it. And at that point, I just started to reawaken to that, and it was a beginning for me. And from there, things just to continue to unfold year after year, going deeper and deeper into uh, spirituality, not religion. I was very anti-religion. It's not no dogma, and but spiritual, and this concept of God and universal consciousness began to open up more and more and more for me, and that's what led me into counseling and into moving into psychology, and it was primarily around addictions. And I began working with families, working with teenagers, young adults that were stuck in the same loop that I was in. And so things just continued to develop over the years. And my spirituality began to it just, it really took off. It's like there were different awakenings and experiences that led me ultimately into what I do today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction.
Sure, sure.
Let's touch upon the sort of so many people that I speak to have that awakening experience through suffering. When
Right.
they get to that point, myself included, I really struggled with drugs and alcohol, mostly drugs. It was binge drinking
Yeah.
when I did, but it was drugs for me that was my big issue for addiction.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. I struggled with opioids as well, like prescription opioids, pain
Yeah.
pills and stuff like that. It was really, really difficult to come off of it. And for me, it was I would stop it for a little bit, and then it'd be like, right, go on, you can have a little bit, treat yourself. And like I found it so enjoyable because it was taking away that pain and numbing myself and all the stuff that I wasn't dealing with at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I relapsed a few times. Was your path to recovery straightforward, or did you have a few moments of relapse?
I had some relapse moments, but they were all early on. I got involved in this program, and they were going to help me with my legal issues, besides getting sober. And so I essentially I lied to them initially because I couldn't tell them that I was still using because then they wouldn't help me. And so and that went on not for long, but it went on for a little bit of time. But I was trying at the same time. I would stop doing anything for a day or two. I mean, I literally, when I was able to stop and I had a few days clean, and it's like, God, that's a miracle, a few days. And then I'd use again. And then a few days more, and then I got a whole week one time. And it's like, man, this has never happened before. And so then it just began to build, and then finally, I had an experience where my drug of choice at that time was heroin, and I I I did some, and this was while I was trying to get sober. I did some, and I know it was good, but it didn't have the same effect anymore. It's like something had changed. It didn't take me to where it used to take me. And I realized at that point that that was it. It was over.
Yep.
And from then on, now, not to say I didn't have some rough moments, but from that point on, I was able to stay clean. And that's been many, many years now, free of drugs and alcohol.
Well, congratulations, and
Thanks.
thank you so much for sharing as well, and being so open about your battle with substance use as well. What do you think it was doing for you at that point in time that you were reaching for the heroin?
Well, I was, as I mentioned early on, I was a very introverted kid. And between various drugs and then ultimately the heroin, one, it helped me to get out of myself. Where and the alcohol was a big factor in this too. It helped me to be less self-conscious, and where I could actually talk to people. When it came to through my teen years, when it came to talking to a girl, I may as well hang it up, because my mind, the fear would just overtake me, and I would just shut down. But when I drank some, then it loosened me up a little bit where I could at least begin to socialize. And then it got better and better and better. And through the heroin use, I was able to continue to connect, but I also didn't care. And, it's like, it was kind of like a whatever. Not that I didn't feel, but it buffered me from the painful moments, or at least it helped. Not that I didn't feel those painful moments, but not as deeply. I mean, you know how it was. It was pretty euphoric, and I don't want to be I don't want to really put that out there because that's it's not an invitation to check it out, because ultimately it turned on me, and it nearly destroyed my life. So at that point, that's when I, that's when it was time to do something different. And
Were
that
you, yeah,
required a change.
were you still having any like spiritual things going on during that period of time when you were using? Like,
I
did
was, I
was yeah,
was, but I
okay,
didn't realize at the time. I mean, I had I had car accidents that I had a couple of near-death experiences. Uh, a, a couple through these car accidents that I had, and another where I nearly overdosed. And I connect very strongly with Archangel Michael. And when I look back, I realized that I was doing how do I easily describe it? It's like I was doing a hit, and I received this message. And the message was stop now. And I stopped with it. I was an IV user, and I stopped at that point and pulled the needle out. And I know that if I had continued on, likely it would have killed me. Looking back, I see that that was Archangel Michael that intervened and said, "Okay, buddy, you need to stop right now." And now I didn't stop doing drugs, but I stopped that moment and just, didn't go to the point of no return. And there were other experiences, again, like I mentioned with the car accidents and stuff, where years ago there, used to, we, we as teenagers, we never wore seatbelts in our cars. Never. I mean, we would tuck the seatbelts under the seat, and it wasn't a law at the time. And I was driving along and going out just having fun with some friends and joyriding and so on. And I got a message, put your seatbelt on. We never wore seatbelts. And I put my seatbelt on. And my friends, I had three other friends with me, and they saw me and they said, "Oh, Paul put his seatbelt on. Maybe we should put ours on too." And they put them on. We topped a hill on this two-lane road. There was a car coming up the middle of the road in front of us, and we had a head-on collision at 70. Had we not had our seatbelts on, likely at least a couple of us would have died. And again, I attribute that to Michael stepping in and just passing on a message, put your seatbelt on. And so, yes, to answer your question, even through that time, I had those spiritual interventions or moments. And I didn't really realize them at the moment that that's what it was until later on.
So I can relate so much with your story. I overdosed at a party. I was up for 2 days, and someone had a bag of something that they had got off the internet, and someone gave me a bump of it, and it turns out there was opioids in it. I'd been
Yeah.
taking all different drugs over the course of 2 days. I just remember starting to feel tired, and I went through I don't even remember walking through to a bedroom. Suppose I went and lay down, and I don't remember anything after that. Somebody found me, and they used naloxone, and they phoned the ambulance and used naloxone so
Yeah.
that I didn't die. So I was only like young 20s at the time when that happened, so it was quite traumatic. And I buried it. Like, yeah, I kept partying even after that. I was so reckless at that point in time. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say I wasn't suicidal that I wanted to die. I was so reckless in my drug use that it was the only thing giving me any sort of relief or satisfaction that I didn't care,
Yeah.
which maybe is a form of being suicidal. I don't know, but not like, I don't know.
Well, and same for me. I I didn't attribute it to the drugs. I just thought, oh well, I shouldn't do as much next time. you know, it's like the car accident. It's like, oh, I just need to be more careful. Had nothing to do with the drugs.
Yep. So no, thank you for sharing that as well. I buried a lot of those things that happened to me during that period of time, and it only to resurface later on when I started my healing journey, and I was able to
Yeah.
maybe cope with it and deal with it as my awakening experiences progressed and all of this stuff started happening. I started to remember what I was here for and stuff that used to happen when I was young, like a child as well. I would get mediumistic stuff going on, like I do a bit of mediumship and all stuff like that comes through for me,
Yeah.
which I tried to stop for a long time because it scares, it used to scare me so much. um, so that started to resurface again. Old memories started to come back, and it was like, right, get back to doing what you're supposed to be doing. So let's
Yeah.
touch upon you went into then counselling, and you started to do addiction work. When did it go into sort of holographic sound and you started to bring sound into it? Were you always into music? Was that a passion for
I
you, or
I always loved music.
right?
I my mom was actually an opera singer, and so I had music around me all the time, all different kinds. Now I'm a rock and roller at heart, but I also like classical and I'm pretty broad with with what I enjoy about music. But it's the thing with music is it's always been inspiring to me, and it's life changing. I mean, during my heavy addiction time, there were certain songs that gave me hope that I would hear. I'd hear them on the radio or on a CD or whatever, and they would give me hope
Can you
to
remember any of
continue.
them, of the names of the
Yeah,
songs? What were they?
yeah. One by Elton John, Rocket Man.
Oh,
And
lovely.
yeah, it just, I don't know what it was. It's not that I related to it or anything in particular, but there was something about it that just gave me hope that there was something more, you know? And so, anyhow, um,
Amazing.
yeah,
Okay, so we were talking about sound and
yeah,
your
yeah,
love of
yeah,
sound. Your love of sound. No,
yeah,
it's so easy to get sidetracked, especially when people jump in. Sorry.
right.
Yeah. So you've always liked music. Your mum was an opera singer, and when did sound start getting involved in your work?
Well, in 1991, I got a message from Spirit. And the message was if you don't start using your voice, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. And I thought, well, crap. That's just because it terrified me because to vocalize, to sing. And at that time I thought, well, singing, that's really all I knew. I didn't realize how spiritually connected it would ultimately become. It was just about singing. So a good friend of mine, uh, a musician, singer, well known, back in earlier days. In fact, he just passed. And in my book that you have, I did a little notation to him. He was one of the lead singers with Three Dog Night, and we also shared an ex-wife. We both had the same ex-wife, not at the same time, um, but we were sort of like brother-in-laws in a weird sort of way. But anyhow, he was my first vocal teacher, and helped me to begin moving through that fear. And I, after a short time of singing and working with him, and then working with other vocal teachers, I had an experience within myself, and I was going through a period of time where I was feeling a little anxious, wasn't sleeping well, and I would practice my vocal practices in the shower, because the acoustics are great. And I would start out with a melody of a song, and then things just began to take free form and creating, they were just going wherever the guidance was for the sound to go. And after a few days of doing that, I realized that my anxiety was gone and I was sleeping again. And I knew it was the sound, it was the music that was being created that was making the shift, the change. And at that point, the path became clearer, that my musical inclinations and my singing wasn't so much about uh, singing music, but about creating sound for purposes of healing. And so that began in the early 90s. And then around 94, 95, I discovered the crystal bowls. And then I started bringing them into uh, harmonizing with the toning and the musical work that I was doing. And I began to take all of that and incorporate it into the counseling work. that I was doing. Like I began to focus more on working with the belief system and grief recovery work. And so I would take and bring the sound into my traditional counseling work, and found that it would, when I would incorporate sound into my regular traditional work, it would it would help to open people up and take them deeper more quickly than I could ever do previously. And it would help to for people to make the transformations of the emotional work, the emotional patterning that was holding them back, resolving grief issues and all of that stuff, and then ultimately help to ground in the transformations that occurred.
So were you
And that
singing? Were
was
you singing to them, or were you doing the bowls to them during the
both.
sessions? Both, cool.
Both. Well, I would do the traditional work, but I would do like 3 day workshops mostly. That's what I most liked doing. And so I would periodically we would do some deep emotional work, and then we would do some sound work to follow that up or to precede it. You know, if you're familiar with Pythagoras, Pythagoras used to use sound in music initially before he would start his work with students, because it would help them to open up to the work that he was about to do with them after. And then he would use sound at the end to help them ground in the work that they had done through the day.
So is there any
So
particular like patterns that you've noticed that are better for like opening up and then maybe grounding? Like different sounds that you end up doing at the time?
um, I take a very spiritual approach. Now, I don't. I love the fact that science has opened up more over the past 10, 15 years to the power of sound. But science and I don't always agree on what's what's going to be the greatest benefit. But at the same time, I'm extremely grateful for what has occurred in science, because it just backs up everything that we do. To your question, are there specific sounds? I can't really identify and say that yes there are, but I know yes there are. But I'm not always consciously knowing what those are going to be for an individual person. Does that make sense?
Yes, so it's individualized. So it seems
Yes,
like to me that it sounds like to me this is a form of channeling.
it is. It is. And that's where these masters of sound, the Hathors, come in.
Okay, let's
Is
dive into this because I have not a single clue about any of this. So where would someone start in regards to like Hathors, Lemuria, Atlantis, stuff like that? Let's start with the Hathors, and you can help us
okay.
understand this a bit better.
Well, the Hathors, they're fifth dimensional beings. They're known as masters of sound and love.
And what's the fifth
They
dimension? Sorry, just to help us
well,
clarify.
we're third dimensional beings. We live in a state of duality. You know, we've got the polarity, sometimes referred to as masculine and feminine energy. But to be clear, it's not gender related, it's energy related. And so this is the realm we live in, the third dimension. As we move into higher dimensions, when you look at the fourth dimension is, it's not a place where you really want to hang out. Fourth dimension is where you will find energies of entities, of ghosts, can be, and typically will be fourth dimensional beings. That souls that are trapped, that aren't able to move into. A lot of times, if someone dies a traumatic death, they don't even know that they're dead. You know, they're in a realm almost. It's kind of like a purgatory type realm, but it's fourth dimension, and
Would it look
There,
would it look three dimensional like we're experiencing now, subject, object, 3D space moving around it, or what would you? Can we
but
conceptualize it?
well, we typically, unless you're clairvoyant, you really aren't going to see that occurring. But they're there, they're here right now. It's a question of how they might interact with you, or if they're able to interact with you. When here's one of the problems with drugs and alcohol, and in some cases, what people are now referred to as plant medicine, is that see, the thing with plant medicine, it's a drug, but it is, it's a plant medicine, as truly all what we call drugs originally derived from the plants, and they've just been altered. But plant medicine opens us up, or drugs opens us up to the potential to connect into higher realms of consciousness, the unseen realms. The problem is that while we can connect with good energies, the not so good energies are also there as well. And that's the concern around drugs, alcohol, plant medicines. If you don't have proper guidance and healthy guidance with someone, when it comes to plant medicines, with someone that knows what they're doing, then you're just simply opening yourself up to whatever might come through.
Yes, I'm going to jump in here
Like,
quickly
yeah,
because
yeah,
I was messing about with psychedelics, and I can quite naturally go into deep states of meditation. I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I'd lie down, I'd do this sort of rhythmic breathing. I'd put on like chanting and stuff like that. I was just being guided to
yeah,
do this, right?
yeah.
I had no
Uh-huh.
idea what was going on. Like, I'm not even from spiritual family or anything like that. I don't know why this was all just happening. And then I started messing about with psychedelics on top of it. One day I was doing it, and then something literally started moving my body, like came in, and it was like I could hear, it was like something else was there, or like experiencing through me. Like, I don't know if I was doing some sort of trance. It was like some sort of trance thing was going on.
Yeah,
After then, now that I've like developed as well some of the skills and not doing anything like that, using drugs or alcohol anymore, I sometimes get, when I'm doing healing work, stuff will use my voice. Like, I was doing a session today for somebody doing healing. Something came through and said Fatima, Fatima, through my voice, and I couldn't stop it. And then I was saying to the guy at the end of the session, I was like, "Who's Fatima?" And he was like, "That's my granddad's wife. It's my gran." And that like had done it through my voice.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's
Yeah,
cool.
but now, like, it's okay now because it's. I wasn't scared. There wasn't fear there. But when it was happening, when I was so open, I didn't know what was going on. And one time, it drained my energy so much. After all this stuff happened, I couldn't even hardly sit up or anything, and I was like, I vomited, and all this different stuff was going on. It wasn't okay. I was too open. And
Yeah,
I think maybe someone says sometimes fourth dimensional beings, when you're in that state, it's like a moth to a light. It's like they see that you're open. It's like boom.
exactly, exactly. They see that, and they're drawn to the light. Yeah, and so that's an area where you just have to be careful, and know that you've got your guides that are there to, I don't want to use the word protect, but essentially that's what happens. You're shielded from that kind of stuff coming through, where you can bring through, like with your client, you can bring through whatever is right for them without having something else come through with it.
Yeah, you know when that happened to me, right? Actually, a thought came into my head and asked permission, and for some reason, I said yes, but before I even had a chance to say yes, like meaning it, like it was like it asked permission to do it, like it had to allow me to say yes. And for some
Uh-huh.
reason, I don't know why I said yes. Like it happened so quickly without even me consciously doing it. It felt like it was very strange.
Yeah, and if you can track that, if it happens again, before you say yes, check in with your guides and say, and just ask. I don't know who your guides are and who you specifically connect with,
I
but
don't know.
whoever, well, ask. Ask, like when you go to bed tonight. just put that question out there and ask that. It's like, okay, reveal to me who are my higher dimensional divine guides, that work in the light, that work with love most of all, and just stay open to receiving, and don't judge whatever names come through.
Okay. You know what
And
happened? These experiences all happened when I didn't have any idea what was going on, and it put
yeah,
so much fear into me that I shut it all down, and I was like, I'm not doing any of this. I'm like, I can't, I have no idea what happened. It scared me so much. I was like, just shoved it all away. And now it's just took time for me to start doing it properly and the right way. For me,
yeah,
I've never had, I know that the universe gives me signs and I am protected, and I do stuff like that in the morning. About like calling out and speaking to the guides, but they've never actually revealed themselves in like a communication way. How do they communicate with you? Is it through thought? Is it, can you hear them? Is it imagery?
it's a bit of both, kind of all of the above. I get through thoughts. I'll get communication. Sometimes I'll actually hear them, hear a communication come through, and on occasion I get to see them. Um, with the Hathors, if it's okay, let's
Yeah.
segue back
Yes.
into the Hathors. And we were talking fifth dimension, fourth dimension, fifth
Yeah.
dimension.
So we talked fourth dimension, but then what's the
Yeah.
fifth?
So fourth, you don't want to hang out there. Not a good place to hang out. You just want to pass through and move on into the fifth. Fifth dimension is, while there's some level of duality that exists there, it's primarily an androgynous balanced energy. And the Hathors now reside in the fifth dimension, and some even beyond the fifth. It's a dimension of higher consciousness, a dimension of love, where the vibration, the love vibration, is greater than what we experience here in the third. And the Hathors, they're androgynous in nature. They present themselves in masculine or feminine form, but in perfect balance within the form that they present in.
What does that mean? Sorry, androgynous, and then it present
Well,
themselves in perfect balance.
well, essentially that's what the androgynous means. Is that it's the being is presenting itself in perfect balance. So it's masculine energy, feminine energy is in perfect balance with one another. Uh, like here, you'll run into people that will refer to um, the uh, the patriarchal energy or the matriarchal energy, and now people tend to not look fondly upon the patriarchal energy, just because of and rightfully so, with how our history has evolved. But at the same time, everything plays a part. It's not good or bad; it just is, and it's up to us to determine what we do with it, and how we internalize it and how we utilize whatever's occurring in our lives in this day, in this moment. But
So the Hathors, have
so
they always been fifth dimensional?
no,
They
they
became
haven't.
fish. They became fifth dimensional.
They became fifth. They actually, which is one of the reasons, and they're not from Earth. And one of the reasons why they're so significant with us now is because they've lived third dimensional life. They've lived this life of duality like we're experiencing, and they were able to ascend beyond that as a race, ascend into upper fourth and then into fifth dimension, and again, a few beyond that. And they, as I mentioned, they're not from Earth. They come from even a different universe, and they were invited to come to Earth and work with us once they went through their ascension. Invited to come work with humans and with Earth by the ascended masters Sanat Kumara. And Sanat Kumara is one of the ascended masters who's said to be the oldest that we know of that has worked longer with Earth and humans than any others. And so Sanat Kumara invited the Hathors to come work with humanity. And in their journey to come work with us, they came through Sirius. They trained with dolphins and whales. And then went on to Venus, more training there, and then from Venus to Earth. Excuse me.
So was there life forms in Venus for them to work with?
Well, because they're higher dimensional, yes, there are. But they're higher dimensional energies because, you can't, third dimensional beings like us, we can't live on Venus because of the, just the energy of that planet. It's, all the, it's gases and on a third dimensional level, gases and the heat and so on and so on. We couldn't live there. We would perish in a moment.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, right? So us as humans, okay, so if we went through the same process of ascension and we went through the upper fourth and into the fifth, we wouldn't be physical form level humans. We would be like a conscious kind of in a being state. Like
Correct,
yeah,
in part. But
in
it
part,
doesn't
okay.
mean we can't still reside in a physical body. In other words, we can choose to have this physical body as well. Like here and now, there are Hathors that will incarnate on the physical realm to work with us. In early Egypt, there are many sculptings of Hathors throughout Egypt at the temples. And again, the Hathors are known as masters of sound and love. And just to a little more about them, that when back in the 90s, oh, and by the way, you asked, is there more information about them? There's a great book out there by a man by the name of Tom Kenyon, and it's the Hathor Material. And it will delve into and give a lot more information about the Hathors. Great book. And Tom is an extraordinary sound healer. And again, the Hathors are known for their sound experience, known as masters of sound and love. In 1999, I took my first group to Egypt. And I've been taking groups to Egypt for 26, going on 27 years now, almost every year. And in 99, that was my first trip over. And I invited a friend of mine from Australia to co-host with me, a man by the name of Alton Camadon. And he taught a practice called the Melchizedek method. He's no longer with us. He died, I believe it was around 2005. He transitioned. Not an old guy. He was in his 50s at that time, early mid 50s. But anyhow, when I got back home after that first trip, I was invited to go to Canada to do a workshop, and it was a belief system grief workshop. And of course, I incorporate sound into that. And the person that was hosting me said, "Could you add an extra day to the workshop and talk and do something with the Hathors?" And I said, "Sure, love to." Although I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no idea. And I had been working with the Hathors for several years, but never presented something that was all about them. And so shortly after the phone call, a few days went by, and I checked in with my guides, and I said, "What am I supposed to do here?" Because I only had 30 days. It was a month that I was to be there. And they began to download all this information. And it was they started coming through. This was the beginnings of holographic sound. They started downloading this information about sound healing and processes of how to apply sound, and it had to do. Here's the thing: holographic sound is a blending of sacred geometry and sound. And through this blend, the sound, through the geometries, the sound is able to open into its multidimensional form. And in that multidimensional form, we're able to hit every level of consciousness. And so nothing unturned, no stone unturned in the work that we're doing. And that's when they began bringing that information through, was at that point. And then from then, it's just continued to evolve year after year after year. They continue bringing in more information, more processes of delivering the sound, which has brought me to creating the teachings that I do now, which is holographic sound healing.
Right, I've got lots to unpack here. So let's go back to, when was the first time that the Hathors connected with you? Were you aware of them initially, or were they coming through and you didn't know what it was? Like didn't know what was communicating with you? Like, what was going on?
They were coming through, and I didn't know. I didn't know who it was. And again, around that 1995 time period, that's when I became aware of these beings that had begun working with me. And that's when I became aware that it was the Hathors. And then they started presenting themselves more clearly to me, communicating more so with me, and in the various forms. And I began having experiences periodically of seeing them.
What would you see? What forms were they appearing as?
Well, they range from about 12 to 18 feet tall. And yeah, they're big. And sometimes they would appear with wings, like you would see hieroglyphs in Egypt. You would see the Isis being one of the masters or deities in Egyptian time, Isis, and you would sometimes see Isis with wings. Well, the Hathors would appear similarly, sometimes with wings, sometimes not.
I seen something. Right, one time I was in bed and I was having a lot of stuff appearing. At the side of my bed, this big, massive. I thought it was like angelic or something. It was huge. It must have been about that size. And I was like, "Is that an angel? What is that?" It was like right above me, towering over me, and it was doing something to the subtle body and my energetic body. And I knew it was safe, but it was like grand and like kind of like a fierce but safe at the same time. It was like really profound over the edge of my bed. And I had no idea what that was. So it could have been something presenting itself in that form, maybe.
Absolutely. That most definitely could have been a Hathor presenting.
Right, okay.
Could have also been an archangel. The Hathors and the angelic realms, they work very closely with the angelic realms.
What are they doing to beings, yourself, like me, maybe all the other beings on the planet? Are they working on everybody? Are they working on certain people to raise the collective? What is the goal of these beings interfering?
They will work with us, and here's the thing: they're not necessarily interfering. They will not tell you what to do. They will offer information. They will offer suggestions, guidance in that. Well, so if you take this path here, this will give you an idea of how it will unfold. Or you could look at this path and here's how this will unfold. And then you still have to make the choice of how you want to go. They won't make choices for you. They will only offer information, and they'll offer their guidance through a way that's not saying do this or do that.
Yeah, so I've noticed that when I started, like every morning, like I will give permission for these beings and guides and all of light, divinity, purity, and truth, and the highest good to work on my subtle body and to help and all that. And when I started giving them permission to do it, the increase of what was happening to me really started unfolding. It's like they just turned the dial up. But it was like, because I had now given them permission in like a safe way to do it, it was like, right, okay, boom.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened to me in 99 was I gave them permission in that, okay, what do I do here? And then they started passing on all this information. So yes, that the giving of permission just really opened the door for them, because otherwise they're just sort of hanging around and, you know, presenting a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But when you say, okay, guys, let's do it,
Yep.
then it's like, all right, let's go.
That's what I was like. I'm here. Let's do it. Do what you need to do. Like, I'm here for the journey. Let's get it going. And it was like, right,
Yeah.
okay, here we go.
Yep. Yep. Here, hop on.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
did you ever see any of the Avatar movies?
Yes.
Okay, well, those beings look similar to Hathors. They have a similarity in their size, um, very, very slender for being 18, 16, 18 feet tall. Um, and they have a similar appearance to those beings. Kind of makes you wonder where Hollywood gets their ideas. So, but to just give you kind of a visual of their appearance, that's something you can relate to.
Are they trying to increase the level of consciousness of Earth, of our species? And what's the grand mission and aim?
Absolutely, that's their sole purpose. Their sole purpose is to be here to assist us in our evolution. And they regularly remind me, it's like, you don't understand, we are so close to one another, as far as consciousness. We are so close. You have no idea how you look at us as being, say, higher beings or whatever. You have no idea. You're actually right there too. You just have to open your consciousness and awareness to realizing that oneness that you are. That divine essence that you are. There I'll do meditations with groups and stuff and so on, and then trainings and so on like that. And as they and other masters come through, it's like just reminding us that we're masters as well. That we're not ahead of you or behind, or you're not behind us or ahead or whatever. We're all masters and equals.
Love that.
And that it's just simply up to us to make that acknowledgement, to realize that we are these divine beings. We are the divinity, that we are God manifest in these physical bodies. And we're the ones that block ourselves
We do.
from that higher knowing, or that higher presence. And this evolution and the fifth dimension and all that kind of stuff, and there are many, many dimensions beyond the fifth. And they just continue to get more and more refined as the dimensions move on. And the thing is all of those dimensions exist around us right now. It's like in the story of Jesus, it says that the kingdom of heaven, or this being says, Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is within. And also that there are many houses in God's kingdom, and those houses, that God's kingdom is us, God, universe, higher consciousness, however you want to define that energy. It's everything. Everything is the essence of God.
Completely
And
agree.
we are that everything.
Yep,
So,
we are indeed. I want to touch upon sort of Lemurians and Atlantis, just to help us understand a little bit better about that. If you could just give
okay.
us a little bit of knowledge.
Well, Lemuria existed many, many hundreds of thousands of years ago
Is it on Earth? Is it a place on Earth?
on Earth,
Okay.
on Earth. And Lemuria had more of a matriarchal energy to it. And Atlantis and Lemuria, there was a period of time where the two existed at the same time. Atlantis being about 52,000 years back from now. But there was about a 20,000 year overlap between Lemuria and Atlantis. And that 20,000 year overlap was when it's like euphoria, that euphoric experience of living. And because while Lemuria had more of a matriarchal energy, leaning more, the pendulum leaning more in that realm, the overlap brought it to a greater sense of balance during that Atlantean time.
Would they have
And
ever
then
met
as
each other? Would they ever met each other, these beings?
they
From
would,
different...
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because they both existed here on Earth, on the earthly plane.
So was it a higher spiritual time? Was consciousness more elevated at that period of time and then it sort of declined again? Like seasonal? It goes for
It
seasons, doesn't it?
was.
Cycles.
It was because we moved through about a 26,000 year cycle, and we as humans, the Earth, and it's broken into approximately 5,200 year subcycles. And at these 5,200 year points, there's oftentimes a cataclysmic experience that occurs on Earth. The last one of those was around the Great Flood. And then previous to that was a kind of a medium ice age that for the Americas, or for North America, came partially down into the United States, what is now the United States. But also that was the last days of Atlantis, was during that time, around 10,000, 11,000 BC.
Okay, so
And
I want to talk about, so why does Atlantis have such a place in sort of New Age spirituality? Why do people
well,
connect with it so much?
because it's the most current previous evolution of humans that we have to us is Atlantis. And then from Atlantis fell, or through major earth changes, Atlantis was no longer. Many of the beings from Atlantis left the planet. And then some came to Egypt, some came to Samaria, some went to South America. And the thing is there were humans that existed in these places, but not evolved humans. And so, for instance, with the Egyptians that came to Egypt, it's like university professors teaching first graders how to do things.
Okay, I get you. So where geographically potentially would have Atlantis lay on the globe?
Atlantis
Do they think?
on the southern side would be around what's known as the Bermuda Triangle. And the Bermuda Triangle, a lot of weird things happen there. There's a great crystal. It was literally a crystal grid that existed around the Atlantean continent. And that most southern point is the Bermuda Triangle. The most the most northern point is around the Giant's Causeway between Ireland and Scotland. So at one time, there was not a strait through there. There was not water separating the causeway from Ireland to Scotland. At one time, that was one, and that was again another of the crystalline structures there.
Is people always comment on parts of Scotland and Ireland being very spiritual places,
Uh-huh.
the Celtic places. I'd had no idea that was even part of that potentially. Wow.
Ye- Yeah, yeah. I've done a fair amount of work in Ireland and Scotland. It's been a while. It was back earlier in the 2000s. And there's so many sacred sites in both. And I mean, it's extraordinary. I'd love to bring a group over again and just hang out.
Well, if you ever do,
But
please connect with me. I'd love to come and join you in whatever you are
I,
doing.
I will. And speaking of that, where are you?
Glasgow, Scotland.
Okay, so you're in Glasgow. I know
Yes.
you're in Scotland, but so you're in Glasgow. I've got some good friends in Aberdeen
Yeah. I
that
lived
have.
there. I lived there for 8 years.
Did you really?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess they're a little bit outside of Aberdeen, and their area is Aberdeenshire. And I actually just got an email from my friend there yesterday. Um, I want to send him a book. He hasn't gotten my book yet.
Yes.
So, but anyhow, that was the most northern point, and so east to west, the eastern point is in the like the borderline of Africa, more mid to southern Africa,
So it was
and
huge. It was
then
a huge continent
oh,
then.
it's huge,
Yeah.
huge continent, and then the western point, the western shores of the United States. It was big,
So
very
how
big.
how advanced were they, like technology wise?
They were pretty advanced. They their approach to technology is it was multiform in that there were two levels of technology. There was a very spiritual technology that occurred, still working with crystalline energies, but from a spiritual standpoint, and then there was a technological approach to crystals, which this was, I don't want to say their downfall, but definitely played a part in the downfall, in that um, the duality was being created. Actually, in one way, how it surfaced was through the separation of technologies, through science and spirituality separating, and their advancements were profound, but they kind of lost their way.
Is it like every good
So
empire will fall? Was it their time to fall, or was it? Is that yeah?
yeah, it was, and if it wasn't, it wouldn't have happened. So yeah, it was their time. The pendulum had swung, and the pendulum had reached a point to where it was into a place where time for a cataclysmic experience to happen, and this one took out the entire continent.
And so some managed to then go to certain places like Egypt.
Correct.
So tell us about, they went to Egypt and then they started to educate, train, build the people who were there.
Correct.
Is there a link between the pyramids, crystal grids? Can you explain, and then also your link to what you do now in Egypt?
Well, the pyramids are amazing structures, but yet at the same time, they really don't hold a candle to the pyramids that existed in Atlantis. The Atlantean pyramids, they were crystalline structures. They weren't, I mean, they were like temples of energy. And the Egyptian pyramids, while they're profound within themselves, they also are energy structures, but they had multi-purpose. One, the Nile used to flow more closely to, for instance, the Giza Plateau to the Great Pyramids, or the Great Pyramid and the Giza Pyramids. And in particular, the Great Pyramid was designed as an energy producer And it was the interaction of the crystalline structure of, see, the pyramid is, it's got a tremendous amount of granite within the Great Pyramid, and granite is crystalline. It's granite, part of its makeup, its structure is quartz crystal. And so the Great Pyramid is got crystal all through it. And the blending of the energies of the crystals, the geometries of the Great Pyramid, extraordinary geometries building the pyramid, and the water that flowed, and the interaction of that created energy. It was an energy producing generator. And not only did it produce energy for, literally for the masses, but it also created, or was an ascension vehicle, an ascension chamber. In the king's chamber, there's the sarcophagus. There was never a mummy in the sarcophagus. In fact, in all of the pyramids in Egypt, there were never mummies found except within one, and that was what's called the Step Pyramid in Saqqara. And it's actually not built as, on the level of the Great Pyramid, for instance. It was built as calling it the Step Pyramid. It was built in steps because they just continued to add another piece to the original structure, because the king continued to live longer than anticipated. So they would just build more and more, and ultimately it created what in the form of what we know as a pyramid.
So the earlier versions didn't have sarcophaguses.
No, they did.
They did, but there was no, the body wasn't preserved inside of it.
The sarcophagus, see, sarcophagus is a misknown term, in that it wasn't built necessarily to hold a being in it, or to hold a mummy, a king or a pharaoh having physically died. That was not its purpose. Its purpose was to help regenerate the energy of that being, or any being that happened to be in the sarcophagus. And how they did that was the sarcophagus is activated through sound.
So someone would lie in it alive,
correct,
and receive, like, it being around, surrounded by the quartz or different whatever crystals they were using, and use sound healing.
Correct, exactly. And that opened them up to higher dimensional. They literally could travel.
Astral
they
travel.
could travel beyond astral travel. Astral travel tends to take place in the fourth dimension. We want to travel beyond that, because we don't want to fool around in the fourth dimension. We want to get on beyond there into more spiritual or sacred grounds. So anyhow, in the sarcophagus, it was again like an ascension vehicle. They could use that to travel to other realms, literally to other, it's almost like beam them up, It's like in Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty. It was like their ability to travel to other dimensions, to other universes, to other planets.
Okay, so what are you doing when you're over there with your groups, utilizing this knowledge?
Well, I do a specific ceremony inside the king's chamber. And it's known as the Gandharva ceremony. And this is something I learned. I mentioned a man by the name of Tom Kenyon earlier. Well, back in the mid-90s, Tom shared this experience, and I was a part of the sharing of this experience, known as the Gandharva experience. And I've taken that and created the Gandharva experience. And so I will do that inside the king's chamber with sound, with crystal bowls. You're not supposed to do this in there. And I hope that none of those guys see this and get upset. But it's profound in that it just opens us into those higher dimensional realms, and the deities from the Egyptian deities that we're familiar with to beyond deities, to Muslim deities, to Christian, Hindu, you name it, they will come in and join together in this experience.
So what are
I
some of the
mean,
stuff that
it
you've
is,
experienced or you've seen in the group scene it happen during these ceremonies?
man, I have some pictures that will blow your mind.
Well, you need to email with them so I can see.
Well, I will, but you can't you can't you can't put them out there.
No, I wouldn't. Okay.
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 Um, but they actually, back in the 80s, they moved the sarcophagus. Used to be in the middle of the room. They moved it because there were things occurring that that the Egyptians became aware of, their current Egyptians, and they were scared for people. So they
What
moved.
was happening? Do you know?
Well, I can't say for sure,
Okay.
but people moving to other places and not necessarily making it back, or maybe choosing not to come back.
Okay.
And they moved the sarcophagus. So they moved it to the side of one side of the room, so it was out of the specific vortex. And which is fine. It's still very powerful. I at times will lay in the sarcophagus and tone in there, and there are levels of sound that where everything just disappears around me. I mean, it's like it's sometimes we refer to as being in the void. It was not the void, it was being in the everything. It's like there was nothing void about it. It's like feeling connected with everything. But it's a specific tone that I would hit, and then
Is that an intuitive tone, or do you know the tone?
It was intuitive for me, because I fooled around with multiple tones and then hit this one. It's like, oh, this is something different, and it was hard to. It was a very specific tone, and it was hard to stay on that tone, because it showed me how, even though when you're singing or creating a tone, that you think you're on the same tone, but you're actually modulating more than what you realize. And so it was about staying on that specific tone, and that's when everything would just go into
Oneness.
into oneness or allness.
Allness.
And I my sense of it is that tone is different for every person. That it's not always the same tone for each person. Now there is a particular tone that the sarcophagus will resonate to, and that's an A sharp. And it's an A sharp, a second octave A sharp. Now I created a crystal bowl that's an A sharp, but it's a third octave A sharp, and then I tone a second octave A sharp. However, that A sharp for me was not the one that sends me into that allness. It was a powerful tone, but it wasn't the one for me as an individual that opened everything up. Mine was different, and it was actually a little bit lower than that. As far as hertz goes, it was about 93 hertz. Because I measured it. I measured the hertz when I was inside as I was making that tone.
Was there anyone else there when this was happening? And what were they experiencing?
They were they were watching. They were experiencing me doing this.
Doing this, okay, cool.
But as far as their experience while I was doing it, I don't know. I didn't even ask them. I was too mesmerized by my experience. It's like, whatever.
So could you recreate this? Could you try to recreate what they have done?
Yeah, yeah, and I plan to. I have to. Now, there's something really special about the experience inside the Great Pyramid, but I'm going to the best of my ability, work to recreate that using that Hertz measurement that I experienced. So, but I haven't done it yet.
So what would it take? It would take the special hertz, 93 hertz that you mentioned. Would it be certain kind of crystal grid structure? Is it the shape of the pyramid? Would that come into?
Well, ideally, but with I work with crystal grids, and I can create a pyramidal energy with the crystal grids without necessarily creating a physical pyramid. So I can
Okay.
create a geometric pyramidal energy, creating a geometric design of grid with the grids that will simulate the pyramid.
Right, okay. We're going to
Does
have
that
to
make
have
sense?
yes, it does make sense. We're going to have another conversation together because I have so many questions that I want to ask you and to delve into this even further because for my work and what I want to do, I would love to start to get to know more about crystals, and holographic sound. Where would somebody start that's interested in all the stuff you've been talking about today? Where would
Well,
they start out?
I would say the first thing is to get my book.
Which is
I've
the healing power. Can you see that? Yeah.
Healing Power of Holographic
Graphic
Sound.
sound. Yep.
Unleash the power of the universe
Yep.
within.
Okay.
And you can get that on Amazon. There's, gosh, I should have, I'll send you the link. There's a
Yeah.
specific Great Britain link
Okay.
that or you probably know it, if you ever buy anything on Amazon.
Yeah, it swaps to the American one, or I'll
Yeah.
find it and I'll include it all in the description
Okay.
below. So if
Yeah.
anybody who's listening wants to get Paul's book, definitely recommend it. It'll be in the description below, so we can start learning a bit more about all the amazing work that he's done. Paul, would you be happy to do a second podcast episode?
Sure. I'd love to.
Yeah, I think we've got so much more to delve into, and that I want to ask you and learn this, especially in regards to energy healing and healing work that
Uh-huh.
is going on a lot right now. It's growing. We're seeing the
is.
space expanding and growing. Is there anything that you could recommend, sort of crystal wise, that I could add to my practice to help get them to boost what's going on during my sessions?
Um, Crystals are definitely helpful. If the crystal grids are even more helpful because they generate much more power than an individual crystal. And they create that geometric container as well for you to work within.
And do you touch upon that in your book about crystal grids?
I touch some
Okay.
on that. I also do a workshop on that. I have to come over and do the crystal grids workshop. I did it once there in Aberdeen, and but it was like what 18 years ago. So
Well, I would be happy to help you arrange it in Glasgow because we could definitely get a turnout for you for that. I know the people would love to come to a crystal grid workshop with yourself.
and it's not a long workshop. I do it in a long day, and it's cool. It's fun. It's kind of like an arts and crafts workshop to create energy. It's I like it. It's a fun experience.
Are any of your workshops online that people could connect with?
I have I have one that is what is it? It's a home study course, and it's one you can get on the website, and it's actually it essentially entails the first day of the holographic sound healing certification training. So it takes in much of that first day of training. So it's available on the website, and it's the holographic sound healing home study course.
So you actually now teach people to do holographic sound. In the next episode, we're going to go into holographic sound a lot more, how it works, what it does, and we could delve into that a bit further.
And I've created that as a certification training. So it's a 4-day training, and upon completion of the 4 days, you're then certified as a holographic sound healing practitioner. And there are additional levels. There's level 3, which will take you to the master practitioner level, and even a teaching level, if for those who might want to teach. So it's a practice that I really want to see out there, and I want others to be able to utilize and to be able to teach it. Because the more who teach it, the more we can reach, and I can't reach them all. So if that's something that that is attractive to people, then by all means, let's do it.
No, that sounds. Honestly, I would like to delve into this further. So next time we speak, we'll talk more about the methods, how it works, and then also the training program and how people then can apply it and the use of it too. Dr. Paul Hubbert, thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours, so I can't wait to speak again. I'm going to have more questions for you, but honestly, thank you so much. For people looking to connect with you between now and the next episode, what is the name of your website and just any other socials that people can connect with?
The website is holographic.com. That's holographicssound.com. And on Instagram, you can go with my name, or you can go with holographic_sound_healing.
Perfect. And the name of Dr. Paul's book again is The Healing Power of Holographic Sound, Unleash the Power Within. And you can find it on Amazon too. So I'm going to be reading this, and the next time we speak, I'll have a better understanding of it, so we can go into some topics a little bit further. And cool. I can't wait to speak to you again, man. Honestly, thank you for sharing your journey, your honesty, your openness, and you've got so much knowledge and wisdom to impart to us. I think it's honestly, the listeners are going to love this. I can't wait to hear the feedback from everybody. And thank you for agreeing to do it as well, taking that time out of your day.
You're welcome, and thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. And many blessings to you and all the listeners.
You too, Paul. Thank you so much. And thank you, listeners. You'll find all of Paul's information below, and get ready for part 2. It's going to be special. And I'll see you guys again in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks.